Hi, we're back to Moving Forward, a podcast about careers and college success, and just having a great life. And in the last two episodes, we talked a little bit about careers in general, and then we started talking about decisions that you have to make typically post-high school. Some people will wait to make those decisions. One of those being the 3 E's. Am I going to enroll at a college? Am I going to enlist? Or am I going to go out into the workforce and be employed? So those are all possibilities, all choices. There is a fourth choice, actually, and it's kind of sad. But last time I looked at the data, 9% of people graduating from high school do none of the 3 E's. And I don't know how they do it, but they choose not to go to college, not to go get a job, and not to be enlisted in one of the armed services. You know, we talked about meaning in your life, and I don't know how you find meaning when you really don't have anything going on. So we want to keep you from doing that. My name is Don Green, and I am the president at Gordon State College. This is less about Gordon specifically and more about just helping people in general. And I'm here with
Tony Pearson. I'm a theater professor and an interim department chair for the Department of Humanities and Fine and Performing Arts here at Gordon.
And then we have this disembodied voice that periodically pops in. That would be our producer. Who are you?
I'm Lainey Eisen. I'm a student intern. I am on the soundboard for this podcast, and I'm a theater major, and I'm involved.
That's good. That's good. So let's talk about college. So you've kind of made the decision of the 3 E's that you want to enroll, you want to learn something. Typically, the smart way to do that is to figure out something you're passionate about, but also something that will pay the bills. If you're curious about more of that, look at our previous couple of episodes, because it is pretty important that you're able to make a living, but it's also important that you can find meaning in your life. So, applying for college. I do believe Lainey's been the most recent one to apply for college.
Yeah, you're the most qualified here.
So, fun fact, was not planning on going to college when I was in high school. I was planning on going straight into auditioning and working in the film industry as an extra or PA and moving my way up. And then right as I was graduating high school, my senior year was my first year in Georgia, so I did not know anybody here. And I made friends with some people who were like, Gordon is a very cheap school to go to, and they offer really good programs for an affordable price. And so I was like, I'll apply to Gordon. If I get in, I get in, and if I don't, I don't, and I'll just go on my way. And then I got in, and it was the best decision I've ever made. I was always kind of like a loner in high school, and then I came here and like instantly made a family here. And yeah, I don't know how my life would go if I didn't decide to come here. I love this place a lot.
Well, you just hit on something around college success, and we're going to have to get back to applications and all that other good stuff. But college success, one of the important things is creating a community. People who join student organizations, people who get a job on campus are far more likely to graduate. And that's not just at Gordon, that's nationwide. And a big part of it is about meaning, it's about relationships, it's about having colleagues that you can commiserate with too sometimes. But you know what? You're not alone, because 2 different surveys were published in the last year, one by UScience. They do a lot of career interest types of testing. And then the other one was OnePoll. And UScience found that 30% of students in high school had no plan. They literally had no idea about what they wanted to do post-graduation. And then OnePoll found very, very similar data. They had 34% of high school students had absolutely no plan about what they wanted to do. So it's not unusual, but it can be dangerous, because Sometimes you luck out and fall into things. Sometimes you don't. So one of the things that you got to do is look at, where do you want to go to college? What kind of college experience do you have? Tony, what did you want, thinking back to that time in your life? What did you want from your college experience?
That's a really good question, and that was a long time ago. I think I had in my head this romantic Dead Poets Society sort of. That was a preparatory school, I guess, in that movie. But I know that when I set foot on the campus of the undergraduate school that I ultimately attended, I knew that it was the one for me. There was a environment. I remember students that I passed actually greeted me, but I don't know. As I think about the idea of someone starting out and trying to find a fit, as we've talked, my son is right now looking at colleges, and he doesn't know what he wants to do, and he has some ideas about what he's looking for, and his school is having him find 10 different possible colleges, and I find that overwhelming. I mean, my wife and I were saying we maybe applied to 3.
Yeah.
If we had a list, it was no more than 5. So I don't know.
Well, I understand the logic behind the Find 10 schools, because it is a common brainstorming activity that you will find that if you give people 3 choices, they can usually do that off the top of their head, but they have to actually start digging deeper and ask the question why when you start extending to a 4th, 5th, and ultimately to a 10th choice. I do the same thing when people ask me about careers and career paths. I have a lot of parents who will say, I have a high school senior and she doesn't have any clue what she wants to do, and how do we start this? And one of my first suggestions is sit down and brainstorm 10 different jobs that you might want, 10 different career paths that you might want to pursue. And then you can start to ask yourself things like, do they have something in common? What is it that seems to be of greatest interest? So you can see the same things when you start looking at colleges, right? What do they have in common? In my case, I came from a tiny town, like more cows than humans, no traffic light, that kind of thing. I wanted a bigger city, not too big, but I wanted a bigger city. I wanted residence hall life. I wanted to be a part of sports. It could be intramural sports. That didn't bother me a bit, but I wanted to be a part of sports. There were just certain things that were important to me. And I wanted, rightly or wrongly, and I see this today, I wanted that D1 football experience where you went on a Saturday to see the big football games. Now I look at it and I think, it was really kind of silly. But for that 18-year-old me, technically I guess 17-year-old me, it was an important part of my identity as a college student at that time. Now, there's a lot of costs that go to that too, because when you go to larger institutions or if you go to private ones like you talked about, I think in an earlier episode, you're spending more money doing that too. So you really have to take those things into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are a variety of other ways that you can experience higher education. One of them is online. I mean, we're seeing more students who are choosing an educational experience online. But I think you have to ask yourself, what kind of student are you? Do you need the motivation of going to class every day and looking into the eyes of a professor that expects you to get your assignments in? Are you a self-starter? Can you do things on your own?
Yeah, online work takes tremendous discipline. If you don't make the effort to log in to the website, that course fundamentally doesn't exist. And no one's going to follow up with you and give you a call necessarily if you don't log in. Hopefully they will, but you never should be relying on that. So if you're someone who does have that self-discipline, I think online can be great. I happen to love teaching online. I actually started teaching an online theater appreciation class because I didn't think it could be done. So I took it on as a challenge just to see, and I found that I absolutely loved it. So there are ways you can create community as an online teacher that if as a student you respond to that, I think you can have a really good, valuable experience.
You know what I love that you just said is if you don't log in, it doesn't exist.
That's correct.
And that's really true.
Yep.
That's really true. Of course, there are students who show up every day, every year on college campuses and then hit the snooze alarm for their 8 a.m. every morning and roll back into bed and never show up for the class. And they're destined for struggles.
Correct.
Yeah. So, just because you're on the ground doesn't mean that you're actually engaged.
Yeah.
So speaking of engagement, it's an extremely important part of college success. And to do that, you kind of got to know yourself. What excites you? What gives you purpose? What do you want from your professors? What do you want from your college experience? For example, if I had it to do over again, I might have gone to an institution or even looked at the institution I attended. I might have looked at entrepreneurship programs and the opportunity to start my own company. It wasn't something that people talked about as much back then, but it would have been a great opportunity for me to stretch myself and better understand that side of me. And people forget, I think parents and students get so caught up in the objective of getting a particular education to get a particular career path that they don't have the opportunity to explore. And that exploration's big.
Absolutely. I think that's a huge part of what's supposed to be the college experience.
Yeah.
Some of that's built into the core curriculum, which we have a particular one here in the University System of Georgia, but I imagine there's some similarity, across the board to the core exposing students to various subjects and ideas.
Okay, so I will give you some time to think about this.
Oh, no.
I'll give you some time to think about this, but I can give off the top of my head a couple different experiences that have been so good for me, and I was dragged kicking and screaming to these classes. So one of them was personal finance. I was in my last semester of school, and I had some elective space left for a class to take 3 credits. And my advisor said, "You're going to take a personal finance class." And I thought, that sounds so incredibly dull. I'm going to hate this. And we learned about how to intelligently buy a house, how to invest for retirement, how to invest for any variety of different goals that you might have, more about taxes, more about banking, all of those kinds of things. It has been so incredibly useful for me. And now I love investing. I love it. I love teaching it to students. And it all started with a class that I absolutely did not want. The other one, which I have to be careful with my English faculty here because I don't want them to be upset with me, but I was told that I needed to have a minor, and it was strongly suggested to me that minor be in English literature. And I was not excited. And I have learned to love English literature, especially, no surprise, Shakespeare, right?
Sure.
But love the discipline, and would have never experienced that had I not been required to do that as part of my degree.
Absolutely. I think for my part, I actually look back on this. There's some retrospective math I was not someone who understood. I didn't take to math well, but in the work that I do now, math is a very tangible thing to me. I have to use math to build, and I can see it now as problem solving and as a different way of viewing the world. And if I had the opportunity to do college again, I would absolutely throw myself into math more than I did. In grad school, I was required to take a history of cinema class that I love too, which it's not quite the same.
Right. Got you. If you had it to do over again, what would you have done instead for an undergrad major?
This wouldn't be great for career necessarily, but history. I find history fascinating, and I don't get the time usually to kind of dig into it anymore. But I love theater history and seeing it as the story of our existence is really is just really neat.
It's cool.
So I love I would do. I think I'd do history.
That's cool. If I had to do over again, I would do finance and economics. And I said earlier, you kind of got to know yourself. So when people think finance, sometimes they lump in accounting. Absolutely not. Like, I'm so ADHD, accounting would not be a career for me. But the finance side, I love that. And I just love economics. So much like you look at the history of humans, I look at the behavior of humans based on markets and finance, and I just find it fascinating.
That's cool.
Yeah.
If I had to do it all over again, I would do nothing because I'm still on my first try.
Well, and you seem to be quite enamored with your first track, so keep it up. That's a good thing. Switching gears a little bit, I hear this story from a lot of parents, and I really believe a lot of it is almost fear-mongering in the press about debt. And I need to say, I get it, that there are a number of people who graduate with six-figure debt from higher education. But I do believe that is typically unique. It's not the norm for people to have that kind of debt. And quite often it's for a variety of reasons, including just mismanagement of student loans, choosing to use them in maybe not the best ways. In other cases, it's people who cannot make a decision about what they want to major in, and that can be a real issue. But higher ed doesn't have to be expensive necessarily, does it?
No. When you are looking around, there are definitely some options out there that are more affordable. And I think that when you're making your choices and your plan, kind of choosing accordingly is a smart way to go.
Yeah, no doubt about it. One of the things that I strongly suggest to people is look at tuition rates. They vary dramatically. And we've said this in an earlier episode, but I think it's worth repeating that at Gordon State, as an example, as a state college, you can get a bachelor's degree, and your tuition for your entire four-year degree is going to be about $18,000. So I have a son that wanted to go into logistics and supply chain management, went to a state college in Georgia here, finished debt-free, and within 1 week had 6 job offers. So it's definitely doable. But that's also the other piece of it, which is choosing the right majors. And we can talk about that in a second. But before we do, quite often a lot of students say, hey, I'd really like a scholarship. I'd love the opportunity for a scholarship. But you need to start with completing a FAFSA, and that is the free application for federal student aid. And there are a lot of people who say, look, my parents make too much money. I'm not going to get financial aid. There's no point in my completing a FAFSA. Well, actually there is, because most colleges, as one of their requirements for providing you scholarships, one of the requirements is that you have to complete a FAFSA. They want to know whether you're financial aid eligible before they start using other scholarship money to fund your education. So I think that's really, really important. But then there's this other piece about choosing your major, because if you're going to run up debt because you choose to go to a very expensive institution, you better be majoring in something that's going to pay you well so that you can pay off that debt.
If I'm just starting out and I'm trying to make a decision about a major, how do I go about doing that in terms of the return on investment? How could I make an educated decision there?
Sure, there are a variety of ways to do it. The one that annoys my kids the most, because I use it all the time, I'm talking about my biological kids, my children. They hate it when I say this, but they ask me questions like that, and I say, Google it. I mean, you've got this amazing computer in your hands these days, and we don't really use it. But you want to find out what a particular job pays. You want to find out what a particular career is going to get you. Google it. It's a really great start. But also, every college, many high schools provide interest surveys, interest testing. You can start with that as well. And then finally, go interview people, go talk to people, find out who in your town is an attorney and ask if you can spend 15 minutes talking to them about their career. I mean, there's a wide variety. Maybe, Tony, it's such a wide open topic. Maybe we should have an episode just about choices, career choices.
That sounds great.
All right. So we'll wrap this episode up and we'll be back with moving forward. And as we do, we will provide you a little bit more information about how you can choose your career. One of the things that we're finding is that people are listening to the podcast and they're having questions. And so what we'd like to do is start logging those questions, and then we'll have an episode where we just simply go through and answer questions for people. If you have those questions, you can provide them. Moving Forward podcast at gordonstate.edu.
Send us your questions.